Encounter is brought to you by the Broome County Council of Churches.
Hi, my name is Joe Sellepack. I'm the Executive Director at the Broome County Council of Churches, and today I'm your Encounters host. Today I have a couple of guests with me. One who is no stranger at all to the Encounter show, Greg Jenkins, who was the Encounter host for several years. And we have him back today representing BC COAD, a community organization active in disaster. Yeah. And Kathy Candela. I did pronounce that correct.
Yes, you did.
Did I?
Mm-hmm.
Very good. Thank you, Kathy. And Kathy is from Project Renew, and she's going to talk a little bit about that as we move forward. But let's start off with Greg. Greg, can you just tell us where we are in terms of flood recovery? Because we've been through it. We were through it in 2006. Here we are in 2011, going into 2012, and we're trying to kind of figure out where we are, where we're going, and how the process works. Many people are tired of the process. Can you at least tell us where we are?
Sure, and it's great to be back on Encounter again with you, and great to be sitting next to Kathy, who's doing such tremendous work with Project Renew. It's interesting as we look at the disaster we're dealing with right now. In Broome County, there's almost twice as many FEMA registrants as there were in 2006. In 2006, there was 4,819, and this time we're up to 9,270 FEMA registrants. And it's just astounding when you consider the amount of people that involves. That's just the households who've registered. That's not the number of people that are really involved in this. In 2006, we knew that we were headed into a 2-year recovery span. And once again, we are looking at a 2-year recovery span. That doesn't mean that recovery is not happening right now. That doesn't mean that funds aren't being distributed and worked out so that we can get people back into safe, sanitary, and functional housing. What it means is that some of these folks are on a fairly long road. When you consider that there's FEMA dollars to put in there, SBA dollars to put in there, insurance dollars to put in there, other loans and whatnot to try to figure into the whole thing, it becomes a very difficult package for individuals and homeowners to try to piece together. And that's why we really encourage people to get into case management if they're having issues with that and if they find unmet needs. All the case management's being handled through Catholic Charities, which is 607-729-9166. Call and get into the process if you think you're going to have unmet needs. Most of the people will be able to take care of themselves. Most of them will have those resources. They're going to have those dollars. They're going to have the knowledge. They'll have the contractors. But a lot of them are going to have some real tough times. We're looking at up to 800 to 1,000 people and households who can't handle it on their own, and that's okay. It's all right if you can't. This is a disaster. And just disaster by its very nature throws things out of the context you're normally able to handle things in. So there's nothing wrong with reaching out and getting the help. And that's the big part of the process. They have to initiate it,
right,
in order for us to be able to help them.
So as far as what are some, if you're thinking about unmet needs, and you use that term, what are some of the things that people would consider as unmet needs? What are some of the things that would entail?
An unmet need is anything that precludes you from getting into a safe, sanitary, and functional home. If you're sitting there and you're sitting in your living room and you can see into your kitchen and you can see into your bathroom right through the walls because you don't have the drywall, you don't have the labor, you don't have the electrician to do the wiring, that sort of thing, and there's no way for you to be able to afford those items, that is a huge example of an unmet need. The objective is to get you back to a new normal. It's not going to put you back where you were. There's almost no way to do that. There is a new normal that people are going to have to come in contact with and be accepting of. But if we can get you back to a safe, sanitary, functional environment, then you really at least have the hierarchy of needs taken care of. Food is another item that is obviously an unmet need. If you're running out of food, there are resources. Call 211. Get on the phone with 211. They'll put you in touch with someone to take care of you. You need to be full and you need to be taken care of as far as your structure is concerned in order to get through the unmet needs.
Yeah, and those unmet needs are going to be, is that where, I know that there's been a lot of questioning about United Way money and the money that's been raised in the community and that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Is that where that money comes from?
Yes, yep. What happens with the money that's been donated to the United Way, we have committees at Broome County COAD, Community Organizations Active in Disaster, who sit down and we're ready to go over cases. We take a look, we make sure that they fit the criteria because the donors gave us the money, understanding that we're going to be responsible with it, understanding that we're going to work towards unmet needs, not luxury items. You know, we're going to make sure we're not giving it to individuals who have massive resources. We're looking for the individuals who don't. We'll sit down, we'll go over a case that's brought to us by the case managers. Everything has to go through the case management process at Catholic Charities to get to the unmet needs money. Then we can put it out to a contractor, we can buy supplies for the individuals. A lot of homeowners can do the work themselves, but they don't have the resources to get the materials. So that may be an unmet need that can come around and be handled. There's a whole process to it, but the process is really going very well. We're farther ahead this time than we were in 2006. It's sad to say that practice makes perfect, unfortunately, but that's kind of what we're looking at. We've been through this before, and we're actually ahead of the curve as far as a lot of the other counties and the other disaster areas throughout the country as far as putting our process together. And I know it's very difficult for people to be patient. It is very difficult for the donors to see their money. Where's it going? Where's it going? How come it's not out there? We want to make sure it's going to the right places, the people who really are in need, and we want to make sure that it's done the right way so that it can all be above board, accountable, and be a solid process.
Thank you, Greg. Now, Kathy, you were working with Project Renew, and I know that the Mental Health Association of the Southern Tier is kind of like the parent organization for your work. And during the floods of 2006, and in particular, and now in 2011, Project Renew and I think its predecessor was called I can't remember. Project Recovery. That those two really did help a lot in terms of helping people come to terms with their own the emotional stuff. So Greg was saying that there's a new normal that they have to live with, right? And so what are some of the resources that you all are bringing to this?
Well, what Project Renew does is we go door to door in the flood areas, the areas that have been hit most hardest by the flood, and all over the county of Broome and Tioga, and they're just asking people to tell their story, and hopefully by telling their story, then it's easing their worries and their mental health issues that they might have. It's an interesting program, and we've seen 1,700 and some individual encounters, and that's an individual encounter is an encounter that lasts 15 minutes or longer.
Right.
So they've had that kind of contact with people on an individual basis. And when Greg says there's 9,000 that registered for FEMA, then that's seeing 1,700 of people is a lot of people to see in 2 months that we've been up and running.
Yeah, and they've suggested that even though it's 9,000 houses, that we're really dealing with a population around 20,000 people. Right. So you've seen 5%, which is a pretty good chunk,
in
especially
8 weeks.
in 8 weeks. Yeah, that's a great chunk of that. And do you have a goal as to how many encounters you want to have?
It's not so much as that we have a goal. It's that the first part of the recovery is the immediate services response, the immediate services program, and that's really individual, trying to get out and meet the individuals, door-to-door canvassing, being at churches and community events, and getting recognized by the community has been the concentration of the first 8 weeks. Once we move beyond that, we go toward helping the community heal more, getting involved with more educational groups, and doing more helping the community heal. So at first in the immediate services, we're working with individuals mostly, and then expanding out to the community in the regular services program.
Now will this take place throughout 2012?
We will go through the anniversary date is what the plan is. That the Office of Mental Health, the New York State Office of Mental Health, receives the money through a grant through FEMA and and SAMHSA, the Substance Abuse Mental Health Services Administration, and we're waiting for confirmation of the regular services program to begin, and hopefully we'll get that confirmation in January or February. So that would take us 9 months from whenever that starts, so hopefully through September, the anniversary date.
And it would seem like the closer you get to the anniversary date, maybe having some of that memory come back will be
right,
huge,
and
right?
for some people not being as far along as they thought they might have been when the anniversary comes by, and some reliving the trauma of just the anniversary of any disaster or trauma in your life. So yeah, that's why they try to time it that way, to keep the program running through then.
Yeah, and Greg, this is going to, there is some talk about this being a protracted or a extended kind of scenario because of a lot of factors. Is that true in your estimation of it?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah.
We are going to be, we say we want to go 2 years. It may be longer to try to get people fully recovered to the best of anybody's ability and the best of them on their own. There are still people who are sitting right now waiting for their insurance checks. They're still on hold for other assessments. So everything seems to have stopped in a lot of individual scenarios. There are appeals being filed to FEMA. There are appeals being filed to the Small Business Administration for the loan process. It takes a lot of time. And with something of this magnitude, it could be a 3-year process. Yeah. Absolutely. And that's not for when money's going to go out. It's already going out. But it may be that for the individuals to get back in, even using volunteer labor.
I was talking with Greg Forrester, who's with the United Methodist Council on Relief, and he was suggesting that in the Northeast here, between when you have the Irene and Lee factored in together, that really what we're dealing with is a very large, really large population of people that kind of goes across several states.
Right.
And so this isn't just an isolated incident like it was in 2006. This is more part of a much larger disaster than what we've seen in the past. Is that true?
Absolutely. It's an entirely New England and Northeastern scenario. And what that does is it stretches the resources that FEMA has as far as personnel, as far as the SBA has as far as personnel, to try to handle all of this. So they end up putting relatively inexperienced people maybe on the front line, so it pays to ask questions and go higher up in the chain to try to figure out some of these issues and ask more questions about your own loan, about your FEMA grant, and that sort of thing. But what it also does, and this is where a huge hit comes in, when you spread it out over something this large, it diminishes the number of donor dollars that can be put into any one specific area. In Broome County, Conklin was the epicenter in 2006.
Right.